Welcome to our latest webinar. Implementing IoT at scale is challenging for any organisation. In today's webinar, we're going to explore where we are seeing IoT being implemented by global enterprises, the challenges they face and how to overcome these challenges. I'm Brian Lappin. I head up BT's Network Edge Solutions portfolio. And today I'm joined by Mark Flanagan, who is Embedded and IoT Business Development Manager for Dell. Baz Kuti, who is CEO and founder of QiO Technologies, leading IoT application and analytics provider. And Andy Rowland, who is Head of Customer Innovation on Edge Computing and IoT. Okay, let's start with where we see IoT being used. IoT means many things to many people, and everyone has their favourite example of everything from nappies to blades of grass. But where is it being used effectively by enterprises? Baz, you're involved in major implementations. What's your experience working directly with customers in this area? Which areas are customers focused on, and what are they trying to achieve through these projects?
We see a lot of implementations worldwide. We work across glass, steel, aerospace, marine, oil and gas customers. And some of the best examples we've seen is where it's really focused on the business outcomes and service to the customer. And one of the major implementations we've done is for a major aerospace client where we took 72 different data sources, hundreds of data feeds coming out of their engines, and effectively allowed them to implement their solution across 80 centers worldwide, 9,500 engines, 2.5 million spare parts, wow. And at the same time produce a 4x return for them.
Yeah.
And so that is kind of what IoT can do for them. Yeah.
So, that's very interesting. So it's very real just now. It's happening just now. Customers are actually implementing it and facing those challenges just now as well.
Correct, exactly. And we see across different industries worldwide interest in IoT solutions and what IoT can bring to business outcomes because of the maturity of some of the technologies which are out there now.
Excellent, excellent. So we know what they're trying to achieve, but we're here today to talk about the challenges that they face. Andy, you talk to many customers in this area. Can you talk us through some of the challenges they face and the things that are stopping most organisations to see the benefits that they would expect from IoT?
So I would say there are three challenges. First of all, a lot of customers are trying to struggle with what is the edge, what does it look like? Yep. Typically, 90% of machines are not being connected historically.
Yep.
You can't send all that data to the cloud, so you've got 50% of the edge. So is that compute? Is there some networking in there? Is there security in there? Because you've got a converged device, you've got OT and IT coming together. So that's something I've been talking to customers probably for about 2 years around. They're looking at their edge strategy. What does that look like? Second one is security, huge issue. You've got this convergence of two worlds. The OT world is very, very insecure. So basically, it's a sort of a security nightmare. So you've got very poor password protection. You've got no authentication on devices. You've got no logs. You're running on old proprietary versions of software and Windows that don't get patched. So it is relied effectively on what I call security through obscurity. So it's sort of been air-gapped and kept away from everything else. And now you've got to join all the dots because you need to take your OT stuff from your machines and your IT stuff from ERP systems to do things like predictive maintenance. And that is a huge worry. And then the third one is that traditionally people have done their computing in the cloud or in data centers. So if you're now going to be processing data close to where it's created and where you want to use it, i.e. in a factory or a mine or a oil refinery, you haven't got the people with the skills. So how do you manage all those boxes? You can't just sort of send them out and say, can somebody just plug it into the network and configure the LAN and configure the SD-WAN at the other end and hopefully it'll work. Yep. It just doesn't work that way. So those are the three common trends we're seeing in terms of, what does it look like? How do I keep it secure? And then how do I orchestrate and manage it?
Interesting.
Just to say what I could follow in from Andy there, the edge for industrial OT has no HTTP standard. There's about 160 different protocols down there. And so the conversion of those protocols into some kind of standard language to transmit out is also a key challenge for customers as we go forward.
Yep.
So the kind of lack of standards down there is a key issue.
So that's interesting. So what we're hearing, Baz, from yourself is, there's opportunity there. There's customers really trying to get some of that benefit and what we're hearing, but there's some challenges as well that we need to try and address collectively to support those opportunities. So let's actually work through some of those challenges. We'll start with Edge. Edge is the term that's used probably as much as IoT is used. Mark, why do you believe having the correct edge strategy is key to the successful IoT implementation? And what should the key components of your edge strategy be?
Yeah, good question. You know, from our perspective, yeah, there's a number of things that need to be thought about at the edge. Obviously, Dell being very much an infrastructure company, we manufacture gateway industrial PC type devices, and you know, when we have customers looking at implementations and so on, and looking at the types of devices, you got to be very careful. A device you're installing may be installed in quite a challenging environment. It could be stuck on the roof of a warehouse, could be stuck on a machine in a factory, so on. It's going to be going through some challenging conditions and so on. So making sure that you're selecting the right device, because you know, we get customers looking at the cost of devices. And you know, going, oh, is this, you know, well, I can buy a Raspberry Pi for a fraction of the price or whatever. But then if you put in something like that that's not designed for the environment, the cost of having an engineer to go back out and fix that or replace something and so on immediately negates any kind of savings that were there. Also, from a strategy perspective, and the guys touched on it earlier on, you got to make sure all the different aspects are correct. You know, what software are you using, what hardware are you using. You know, in Dell, we put as much effort into our partner ecosystem as we would into the hardware to ensure that those ISVs, those partners, their software will work correctly, is certified correctly in our hardware, and so on.
Excellent. And I think, you know, Mark has explained some of the challenges of Edge and the opportunities, Andy. But looking at Edge from a connectivity and network perspective, what further changes does the organisation need to look at when they're implementing an Edge strategy?
If you think about where the Edge fits, really, it's fitting between your local area network and your wide area network and the cloud.
Yep.
So you almost need to look at it in a holistic view. So we talk about things like sort of intent-based networking. So the focus is not on so much the individual parts. It's around the end user experience. It's around, you know, your applications running as they should do. So you almost need to sort of have a series of APIs and a software layer across the top to be able to manage all these components, so that you drive that experience. So very much actually, well, understand the intent of the users. What are they trying to do? Understand what the policy is across the whole end-to-end network, and then make the necessary adjustments. So you're almost trying to keep everything in equilibrium and optimized. So it's not just about the compute piece in the middle, it's about the whole end-to-end sort of experience, really, trying to actually make that work.
Yep, okay. So Baz, Mark's talked about having the right hardware, getting over some of the logistic problems, and he's talked about bringing it all together from a network and a service perspective. I mean, you've had lots of experience delivering successful IoT projects. Do you have examples of where organisations have got it right or wrong in terms of their edge strategy and, you know, how they actually implement it?
Correct. Just both valid points in terms of overall strategy. In terms of companies which have thought about it the right way, you know, now they call them some digital organizations, or they call themselves, in terms of IoT strategy, in terms of IT organizations. The key things we see for success are alignment. Okay, alignment between the individual engineer working in the factory and alignment with the digital organization being created or enabling digital transformation. So those alignment concepts are really, really key for success, because it's really about culture. Because you're bringing in two cultures from an IT point of view and an OT point of view, which need to work together, okay? And allow them to, and so you've got a huge amount of experience in the engineering space, and the world of the IT space is different to them.
Yeah.
Okay, and so alignment is really key. The technical side of it, the platform side, the software side of it, Andy's absolutely right. The holistic approach, end to end, and you're going to have interoperability as a key factor. That's really, really important, because as we see it around the world, selecting platforms, just one for everything, may not be the right strategy.
Yeah. And
so what you got to do is, how do I design interoperability into my software platform as we go forward? Next area of some success is repeatability, because you're going to design and build something in one plant, and now you want to scale it and repeat it again and again in another plant. And so how do you ensure repeatability as you go forward? So companies which are thinking in those ways are really key, but driving it from an engineering point of view is really, really important.
Right, okay.
Okay, great.
So I think some good points there about, it's technology, it's about being able to deliver an end-to-end service, but it's also about culture and being able to scale your deployments and deliveries as well. So that's very interesting. I think that we talked about the next key challenge when looking at exploiting the benefits of IoT is security. And again, from your experience and from what customers tell you, what are the main challenges that our customers see around security?
Okay, so I think there's two areas. I tend to use a sort of a home analogy. I think there's a basic housekeeping, so locking all the doors and the windows and limiting how many spare keys are out there.
Yeah.
And then there's the sort of dealing with the unexpected. So let's use a sort of smoke alarm scenario in the home. So you have to apply the same thing in terms of this setting. So you think about, you've got your edge device, it's connected over the LAN to all these different PLC controllers. So, you need to understand what's out there, what's connected. Is it something you expect to be connected? Is it behaving in the way that it should do? Or is there something, strange going on? You need to look at effectively segmenting. So your sort of your LAN or your virtual LAN. So sort of micro-segmentation to control things, using things like firewalls to limit the blast radius. So if something does go wrong, you've got to think about the human beings. So you've got privileged users in the manufacturing space or in the industrial IoT. You've got to watch what they're doing. So are they acting sort of in a way that's not their normal behaviour? So there's all of those sort of basic sort of housekeeping controls. And then the other side, the sort of smoke alarm analogy is, you need that advanced warning of things like zero-day attacks, government-sponsored advanced persistent threats. So something like, NotPetya, which devastated a lot of industrials 2 years ago and cost them hundreds of millions to recover. That sort of thing is a real concern. So you need really advanced threat intelligence, lots of AI, but also to understand that the bad guys are now using AI, against corporations, and they're even corrupting companies' AI that they've trusted. So what's called adversarial AI. So you assume everything is fine, but they're filtering data into it so that it behaves slightly differently. So it's a combination. Get the housekeeping right, but then you need really, really good threat analytics to look for those needles and haystacks, those early signs that something isn't quite right.
Okay, excellent.
The environments we're working in are critical infrastructure. So you're in power plants, nuclear plants. And when we're talking OT, what kind of environments are we talking about? Steel plants, huge industrial plants, oil and gas refineries. And so these are national critical assets. And so now you're enabling connectivity and integration into more advanced systems and analytics. How security becomes so play. So the threat factor, the national threat in terms of national security, is a key factor as well to take into account, because these assets can be compromised. Okay. And there's liability around that.
And there have been real examples. There was a German steelworks a few years ago where the guys couldn't actually control it. And it was starting things were overheating and melting. There was a recent incident, of a nuclear power station in India that was compromised. So, these things are going on, and unfortunately, they'll only get worse as things become more connected.
So I think very often in this new world we talk about security by design, and I think in this space especially, it's very critical to the successful implementation of IoT. I mean, Mark, from a manufacturer perspective within Dell, how do you see integrating security services into your overall solution? Is that something that's key for you?
It is. I mean, within the whole Dell Technologies portfolio companies, there's a number of security businesses in there, RSA, SecureWorks, and so on. But again, going back on what the guys were saying earlier on, with a lot of these projects, you're putting machines, devices online that were never designed to be online before. So we would, even though we've a big security component within the organization, we actually partner with a lot of companies who specialize in, what we'd call OT security and specialize in securing these type of assets.
Okay. And Baz, just come back to you on that security questions. You've obviously had a lot of experience of implementing solutions with customers. I mean, what's your typical approach to security within QiO?
We're engagement with IT, where security would sit, is right at the beginning. We won't implement our software without security being involved. So we call these design design digital teams, which we create cells, and security is right in there. And the process by which security engage at the design stage, the architecture stage, and then all the way through the life cycle of deployment. And so that when we get to deployment, the processes that client has for pen testing, we go through, okay, and full review and audit of our work to the client. And that sort of trust in security, both from their data, access from their customers and so on, and also the connectivity we're putting in place is so important with their security functions. So security and the design, they have these security groups in these organizations going through those gates and getting our architecture and our software validated through security. What it does is, what it enables us to do is, again, back to that word repeatability. Because once we got it through security, then the next implementation is going to be faster. So it's all about scale and repeatability. And so if you involve security right at the beginning, you're going to get repeatability, you're going to get scalability.
Okay. So you design it in at the beginning, and that helps with you when that's some of those scaling issues that we've talked about and we're referencing in this call. So, so the final challenge is around delivering a consistent end-to-end service. Andy, we talked about that earlier on.
Yeah.
What do we feel the challenges that enterprise face in that space?
Okay, so I guess if you start at the beginning, you can't just ship a box out and get somebody to plug in, as we said before. So we're looking at things like secure device onboarding with Intel. So you can have a chipset in there so the box can identify to say it's the right box connected to the right network. So that's a starting point. But really going beyond that, you almost need a portal so that you can start to actually manage the box. So let's say it's a white box, so you've got some compute in there, you've got some virtualized network functions, you've got some security software, you've got a number of IoT applications. So you need to have a means basically of being able to patch those, to do firmware upgrades, to maybe bring in new applications in the future, because this potentially is quite a long-term solution. You don't want to have to rip and replace something in 3 years' time. So that combination of secure install, but then actually thinking, well, how are we going to manage this? And that sort of links back into the intent-based networking we talked about earlier, having that overarching platform that allows you to manage all of these devices that are going to be in literally thousands of sites. So it's it's quite a difficult sort of nut to crack, but I think it's absolutely key to be able to do that.
Okay. And Mark, I guess that's when we talk about IoT, we're talking about it sort of sometimes being outside of the data center space. So when you're looking at considerations you need to be aware of around deployment, I guess manufacturing is global, so you have to think global and act global as well. So how do you do that within Dell? What are some of the challenges that are faced there?
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of, I suppose, lucky within Dell, coming from the technology background and designing products, servers, laptops, computers for a global market. And we've had to work the same way when it comes to the IoT business and gateways and so on. We would ensure that any devices that are being sold, the region they're being sold into, all the correct certifications are in place. And it's something we've had feedback that kind of differentiates us, because with some suppliers it's kind of, here's a box, now you go do your own certification, you do whatever needs to be done. We do a huge amount of that in-house. We also provide things like particular certifications for certain industries. Marine's a very, very busy industry for us here in EMEA, and a lot of our kit is marine certified. And that's a big plus when you're dealing with some of these very large companies who are making anything from engines that are going into ships or all the engineering equipment and so on. So coming from an organization that, that whole global thing is part of our DNA, and it's been great. We've been able to sort of filter that down to our IoT business. A lot of the customers we deal with are global customers. So we could have one customer where we're supplying equipment into Europe, Middle East, Asia Pacific, Japan, the US, and so on. And again, having those tweaks sorted for the customer in advance is a big thing, because a lot of customers have kind of found out the hard way. They've bought kit in one country, shipped it to somewhere else, and it doesn't work. And I'm sure you guys have seen those examples as well. So it is having that global scale is a big advantage as we see it, because we can pass that out to our customers and ensure what they're getting is correct for the region it's going into.
Excellent. And Baz, your customers are global as well. So are there specific challenges you see around delivering global in terms of regulations or data privacy, etc.? Is there anything that you see there?
Absolutely see that. We got country regulations. Data can't move out of particular countries. We've got customers in the Middle East, we've customers in Germany, and what we do is the beginning of the project is this data discovery exercise. And we work with, again, parts of the security organization. Customers generally have done a data classification process, and they've mapped their high-level data needs out in terms of classifying things out. But then we take that and say, okay, how will the software at different layers now enable that? Okay, so we've got a client right now where the data cannot leave Germany at all.
Yep.
It gets audited. So the cloud is in Germany. The data cannot move anywhere. We've got another client where we have to guarantee no access to anybody from China, for example. There's an absolute complete wall on that. Both from our when we talk about data and privacy here, is ensuring if we've got anybody who's working with Chinese cannot access that client's data. So we have to, as a software provider, an application provider, ensure that person internally is firewalled off, for example. That's another thing. People don't think about those kind of things. And then if you look at data movement from the edge to a private cloud or a data center, and what goes into the data center and what can be allowed to go to the cloud, and putting those policies in place at the data layer as data's been ingested, is what we have to go think about and architect and put into our software as we go forward. So really, we talk about layers of cloud, but the layers of architecture, but those are interoperable. They're going back and forth because you're putting algorithms back into the edge, and you need to train that data before it goes, and the algorithm becomes relevant. So how do you make sure you got the right data and it's been classified and approved before you go and start using it?
Okay. So that takes you back to some of the security discussions about having that up front and that engagement up front with the customer to understand their specific requirements, either from their industry or from their specific country.
Exactly.
So I guess once we overcome those challenges, how do you prove the value of the solution? How do you prove the ROI to the customer that then they can scale and they can look to scale their capability?
Yeah, one of the challenges we see is identifying the use cases or the areas where value is in year.
Okay.
So what you've got is kind of a lot of sort of marketing has happened across the last few years, and there's a little bit of disillusionment is where is the ROI? And so our approach is that you should be looking for in-year return. One of the kind of stepping stones in that is through energy. Okay, so if you're in a high-intensive energy area, like steel or glass or cement and things like that, we see in an average plant may use $30 million worth of gas a year, okay, and energy costs. And we see about 3 million, 10% of those savings coming through. That's immediate, okay, and there's a carbon aspect to that. The carbon aspect of that is, in this case, is a steel plant and it's 5,000 cars, okay, is what we're saving. And it's actually measurable. It's not some spreadsheet somewhere where somebody's tracking. It's all measurable and trackable and auditable in what we do. So we see those kind of solutions which are effectively focusing the in-year return, really focusing on energy, and then going into predictive maintenance, where we see, again, anywhere between 12 to 15% savings on their maintenance costs because of predictive activities.
Okay, so I mean that's interesting because there's some real benefits there to customers to go after. So it's really important that the ecosystem tries to solve some of the issues that we've talked about today, because there's real, in-year benefits are very compelling to most organisations.
Correct. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, just expanding slightly. There's a couple of elephants in the room which we haven't addressed yet in detail. So this is an interesting question. So around the hyperscalers and the 5G, let's start with 5G. Andy, I know you talk a lot about 5G, but does edge compute need 5G more than 5G needs edge compute?
Okay, it's a good question. I would say actually that 5G needs edge compute, or what we call multi-access edge compute. The reason is, if you think about particularly how 5G is used in manufacturing, in fact, there was a report came out today that said that 25% of all the 5G use cases will be manufacturing by 2028. But if you look at things like co-robotics, augmented reality, ultra-high definition cameras, monitoring production processes, all of those things need super low latency, high availability, and often quite high bandwidth. So that fits very nicely with 5G, but you really need to run it at the edge, not in the core of the network. Potentially, you're looking at a private 5G network if it's something that's business critical. So I think 5G works very well at the edge, and we have done previous trials for customers looking at that. I think the other way around, I think a lot of edge processing has been done in factories way before we had 5G or even LTE. A lot of it is fixed or wireless LAN technology that's out there. So I think it's very much that way around. And I think increasingly we'll see more and more use of 5G in a manufacturing setting, because there are some very clear benefits that we can articulate.
Okay.
You just see if you move and use AI to be augmented intelligence, and you got the worker with analytics, and latency is a key issue in terms of doing some activity, then how do you enable that? So we see 5G as a vehicle, as a key enabling technology for Industry 4.0, because you're moving the data out, doing the algorithms or doing the processing, and then you're pushing those algorithms back, and you got edge applications which are augmenting, as I said, the human intelligence.
Yeah.
Okay. That's how we see it. Okay.
Okay, excellent, thank you. I'll open this up to anyone and see if you've got thoughts on this. What do you feel the role of the hyperscalers are in Industry 4.0 and IoT in general? Maybe I'll come to you, Baz, first with your view.
My view is that they're an enabler. The hyperscalers are providing a series of tools, and then you have to go and make those tools think of an IKEA kit. Okay, yeah. Okay, it looks great. You've seen the advert for it, you've seen the sofa, but when you bring it home, you've got to assemble it all. Okay, and so they're providing a series of toolkits which allow you to go and bring that data into their cloud. Okay, and so whether it's IoT edge, IoT software components, or AI components or analytical components, you've still got to assemble all that together to unlock the value.
Yep. Okay,
and their ultimate goal as a hyperscaler is to get their data, your data into their cloud. Okay, and they're just providing the vehicle by which that can be smoother.
Okay,
that's how I see it.
Okay, Mark, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, we would kind of work with a lot of them. We see partners working with them. I think they do have a learning curve when it comes to the OT side of things. I mean, although they are providing the cloud service, they've got to understand, they've got to have a good understanding of where that data is coming from and protocols and all that sort of stuff. So I think I do see them educating themselves pretty quickly. I think there's a bit of a way to go yet, but I think, yeah, they see a big opportunity in the future. And yeah, I think the more they skill themselves up, the better they'll do.
Yeah, an important part of the ecosystem.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. So finally, we're here together, a service provider, an edge provider, and an IoT provider. I think that highlights what we've talked about. This is an ecosystem with lots of parties work together to overcome some of the challenges that we've talked about to unlock some of the benefits, Baz, that you've talked about as well. How do you create a collaborative approach to building, this capability for customers? So how do you open up some of those benefits to customers? So Baz, again, maybe start with you.
Our approach has been through temporatizing applications. So what are the 6 applications which industrials will need in the future to run their operations, and making those applications in such a way that the engineer who's going to use it at the end of the day feels comfortable with the outputs from them, the recommendations coming out. And so that sort of application enablement using advanced software techniques is our approach to what we're doing. And then through a software platform approach, interoperable to other platforms, is what we're also doing.
Okay. Excellent. Mark, any thoughts from your side?
Yeah, I mean, from our perspective, you know, our business is very much focused around our partner ecosystem. You know, we very early realized Dell, yes, we're a very large company, but we can't be the #1 expert in manufacturing, healthcare, industrial automation, all these different areas. So as well as kind of designing IoT infrastructure and so on, we've put a huge amount of effort into our whole partner ecosystem, and that's worked very well because we get partners coming to us, and again, going back to the whole thing around any big solution requires multiple partners. We've been able to match up partners where a partner is coming in with one aspect and they're going, who should we talk to about security? Who should we talk to about communications? What, you know, advises Dell, and we're able to bring, and we've multiple examples now of large scale implementations where we've brought different partners together, and again, you know, working with partners, we've had examples where we've worked closely on IoT projects with, you know, companies who are you know, sworn enemies and competitors and so on. But I think everyone looks at the IoT space a little bit differently, and it's kind of all hands on deck and let's all get stuck in. It's still relatively an emerging thing, and certainly we've seen a lot of collaboration with companies who, you know, Monday to Friday are our direct competitors, but you know, you got to come together on these things and get the issues solved for a customer.
Excellent. That's encouraging to hear.
Yeah.
Andy, what about yourself from a service provider perspective? What's your...
I guess where we start at the beginning, I mean, this is a very, very complicated area for customers to scale. And obviously a lot of the customers we're talking to are global. So I think, you need to have, the best players in each of the areas to work together, because, you're looking at applications, you're looking at compute, you're looking at networking, you're looking at security, you're looking at high-level orchestration and service. So there's a whole range of different things that all have to work together if our customers are going to get beyond the sort of multiple pilots they're running at the moment and actually, realise some of the ROI that, the BAS is seeing. So it has to be that collaborative model. I don't think any one organisation is ever going to be able to offer that, to the, the big multinationals that we're working with.
Okay, excellent.
The other thing about what Andy said and this ecosystem is not just about collaboration with the partners, it's collaboration internally. Back to that alignment.
Yeah.
And so, companies are having to figure out their own internal silos, organizationally and functionally, across plants and across business units, and then across between different data silos. And so, who's owning the data at certain is also a big question.
Yeah.
When you bring maybe, in one case we brought 72 different data sets together. And the question was, well, who's owning that? So data ownership becomes a key factor at the end of the day when the solution's been provided. And these are questions the company themselves has to answer. Collaboration really requires internal as well.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you all. Okay. So in summary, we have seen the opportunities and benefits around successfully deploying IoT projects for customers are real and exciting. Baz talked about some of the in-year benefits we can actually get, so that's worthwhile going after. However, like many things, challenges exist to successful execution. In this session, we have covered a few that we believe are important. The challenge of developing and deploying a successful edge strategy, the challenge of securing deployment and environment, and the challenge of delivering an end-to-end service across multiple domains outside of the traditional data center and on a global basis. We're not trying to pretend that these are the only challenges that will be faced by our customers, but we believe that developing the right partnerships with the right knowledge and the right capability is key to successful delivery. Hopefully this short session has provided some insight into potential challenges and approaches to dealing with those challenges. If you want to learn more on this topic, or indeed work with our experts in this area, then contact your BT account manager who will arrange a follow-up session. Thank you.